folks. It's a pleasure to have your company. Welcome to it. We've been taking a break for a while, but we are back in full swing. This is APX, where we concentrate on the one spirit that makes you an unbreakable mind, an unstoppable force, an untamed spirit as a whole, to become an army of one, an apex predator. Across from me, I've got a great gentleman, and I'd like to start this off with the premise as we normally always do. And it's a quote that should loom large. And it goes as follows: stay loyal, remain free, always have honor. The immortal words of the late Sonny Barger, who was the founder of the Hells Angels Motorcycle Club and also wrote innumerable books on the subject. Now, my generation won't know Sonny Barger from Adam, but I do want to tickle your brain a little bit that if you've ever seen the TV show Sons of Anarchy, it would be Sonny who made a heralded cameo appearance, and especially at the end of the third season, you can see the triage of Hells Angels motorcycle members driving by as Charlie Hunnam and company are hauled off to jail. But nevertheless, focusing back on the quote, it was made even more succinct by Micah Fink, who worked as a military contractor for a time and did a great appearance on the Jocko podcast, who said it even better. We need to redefine what it means to be free as men. So let's go back to the basics. Excuse me. Learn about your history. What did men that came before us fight for? And what did men who came before us die for? As well as taking up an activity that shuts off the noise of the great unwashed and the mass media, be it motorcycling, boxing, MMA, music, whatever it needs to be that makes this of yours functional. Important note is you have to break free from the matrix and be your own hero. Across from me is a man who yields to both these highlights. Marty Packer is an avid motorcyclist and outdoorsman. He's a podcaster with a great podcast now currently doing the rounds called Perspectives. And some of the aspects of which he has covered has included music. He had Mitchell Kessam on, the actor and stand-up comedian, great guy. And he's also delved about subjects, namely the Mandela effect and Project Bluebeam. I hope that made you sit up right there. But above all else, Marty is a beloved husband, father, and grandfather as well. He joins me here on APX to talk about, namely, his alter ego, known as the Savage Gentleman. We're going to be talking about, namely, perspectives, as well as the red pill, what makes an ideal spouse, and fulfilling our destiny as men. Marty, you're a gent for coming onto the show. Welcome, brother.
Thank you. Quick correction, my last name is Packer, like football team, Packer, Green Bay Packers. But I know my Instagram spelling, it looks weird the way the font is. So
I take ownership there. Sorry, brother.
Wow, what an introduction. Thank you. I'm honored.
It's only a pleasure. We've been planning this for a long while, and it's great to finally to bring it to execution. And yeah. I mean, you're doing the rounds on social media. I mean, just the entity alone.
Thank you.
Tell me about your earlier years. How is it that you came to adopt the mindset that you have today? I'm sure it's quite a story.
You know, it's funny you bring up Sonny. I knew Sonny. I was in a motorcycle club in Arizona for many years, and actually had the opportunity to meet and have some sit downs with Sonny. I by no means, claim any friendship with Sonny. However, he was just a larger than life gentleman. Like the guy created an empire.
He did.
Wit and will. He was a powerhouse. Even up until the very end, he was one of the most respected men I'll ever, have had the opportunity to know. In fact, there was one opportunity where I actually had the opportunity I was a prospect, and we had gone to a party where the HA had invited all the clubs in a confederation to they have a steak dinner and entertainment. And our two clubs had the opportunity to, they were having a sit down with Sonny. And so me as a prospect and another prospect from another club, we had to sit with the old ladies and kind of watch them while the leadership was over doing the meeting. And so I had the opportunity to sit with Sonny's table as a prospect, and yeah, it was quite the opportunity. Kind of scary.
I'm sure.
Correctly, but yeah, it was a whole different life. But yeah, he really
sure.
He made a really good movie called Dead in Five Heartbeats. Have you seen it?
I want to badly, but it's not easily available.
Oh, I'll get you a copy.
I'd appreciate it. Thank you, brother.
all of the clubs in Arizona that were part of the Confederation took place in that film. So there's several clips in that film where they did some pretty deep rides together. So yeah, it's a
yeah. But you grew up with motorcycling all your life, didn't you?
I got my first bike when I was 12. It was a little Yamaha Enduro that didn't run.
I remember those.
My dad got it for like $25 at a yard sale and brought it home, and it would run for like 13 seconds and flood out, and then we might be able to have that thing run for 5 or 10 minutes before it would be flooded so much, let it sit for an hour. But that was my first experience in motorcycling, and I fell in love. Once I hit those two wheels and I had a throttle, it was all over for me. I'm
sure.
Because I got another bike. I was doing pretty poorly in school, goofing off and all this. And my parents said, if you get straight A's, we will buy you a brand new motorcycle. My uncle owns a motorcycle shop down in Southern California. So I got straight A's I had to do it for 2 semesters. And so my dad came home and he had a new motorcycle. It was newish. It was a repo, but it only had a few, 400 or 500 miles on it. So I had that bike for 2 or 3 weeks, and I broke my leg jumping out of a barn window trying to impress a girl. So
ouch.
Sit on that bike with couldn't ride it for, I think, 3 months. And then I got on it a week after I got my cast off, and I wrecked it and I broke my hip.
But still, you kept on getting back on the iron horse.
Oh yeah. I played a couple of them down since, and and I had a girl pull out in front of me and T-boned me, or I T-boned her in 2009.
Gee.
Bike in, but nothing will ever. I'll never stop riding ever.
Well, you know what? All habits die hard.
Right.
And did you also grow up with like the punk rock scene, Black Flag, or were you more into like the surf bands and the Stones and all that?
No, I was into 80s metal hair bands, Cinderella, Bon Jovi, all of the.
Absolutely. Now you're talking my style. I mean, if I think about it, the best music. Look, let's not deny, 60s and 70s had the immortal classics, but in the 80s, we're talking Alice Cooper. We're talking Guns N' Roses, Appetite for Destruction. We're talking, the list is too many. The Stones. We're talking, oh my gosh, Motley Crue, for goodness sake.
Appetite for Destruction, I think it was a game changer for the whole industry, because Axl Rose came out and he started a new style of metal that could not be duplicated. Like people tried Skid Row, tried hating them, and Sebastian Bach and some of the other ones, but Axl Rose took Guns N' Roses to such a level that it kind of killed '80s hair bands because they tried to duplicate it, and then
You
they
did.
went into, then you started getting Nirvana and some of the other, the '90s music that
Grunge. Yeah.
they couldn't,
No, they couldn't. No, they couldn't.
like,
If you think about it as well, Judas Priest, who had been like a pop-ish sort of speed metal band in the 70s, took
Yeah.
a glam side in 1982 with Screaming for Vengeance, which produced the hit called You've Got Another Thing Coming. And then
Yeah.
also in 1984, it also led to Turbo Lover off of the album Turbo, which was supposedly called Twin Turbos in 1984.
That was a horrible album.
Well, if you think about it, Rob Halford did come out of rehab, so it
Yeah.
was a steady process. But if you've heard their new stuff lately, my gosh, when Richie Faulkner took over for KK Downing, it really took them to a whole new level. Really, it did.
Yeah. In fact, there's some of the bands that are making their comebacks now are coming back better than ever. I don't know if you ever remember Kip Winger, but he's just come out with new stuff, and he's
Winger
got a good edge. He played a solo album, Winger, and it was just called Winger. I think it was in 1987. It was a really solid album, but he never really had that. I think Kip played for multiple other bands before he went solo, and I'm having a hard time remembering who he played for. But he just made a solo comeback just last year, and he sounds better than ever. He's my age, and he's got some good pipes. So,
and just so by the way, Marty just graduated high school the other week, so he's still a youngster. That's not age, that's experience.
that teenage kids that turned into adults that just, holy crap. You only feel as old as you feel, right? I
Absolutely
feel like 20s. There are days when I wake up and I have to take inventory of the aches and pains before I get out of bed. My 20s have a very young mentality.
Well, speaking of, this is the perfect segue. Did you ever feel that growing up you never fit into society? You were really more the fact of you banged to your own beat, more or less?
Absolutely. In fact, my friends from high school will tell you I'm one of the most unique characters in my class. Now, I grew up incredibly poor, and maybe I used my own style to compensate for that. When a lot of my friends grew up, middle class, fairly well-to-do. I remember my mom making a lot of school clothes when my friends would come to school in the fall in brand new clothes, and I had stuff that my mom had sat on the back patio. We had a back porch that was an enclosed patio that had been kind of enclosed, right? And she had her washing machine, her sewing machine out there with the washer and dryer, and would sit there and sew for hours and hours and hours. And she would always get the trendiest clothes patterns that she could get at Joann's Fabric or whatever, and she did her very best to make us look like we had the trendy clothes, right? But we all knew that we didn't. So, and for compensation for that, I got a mohawk. I was the very first kid in my school to have a mohawk. One day I'm like, I'm gonna get a mohawk, and I went and got, I had a mohawk, and now a mohawk in high school is probably a very common thing. But in 1986 in Blackfoot, Idaho, which is a very small, town in the middle of Idaho, you don't see people with mohawks. So my friends would always tell you that I did beat my hair. And that carries over even to this day. I don't conform to the normal rule. Big chunky jewelry. I dress a certain way, and I I've worn my hair in long dreadlocks with a dread hawk, because I'm true to myself. It's the way I like, the way I want to be, and I don't let society dictate who I am. And on it's gotten me where I am today. It's actually gotten me further beating my own drum than being somebody who's just, wants to sit down and let society tell them how to be. I won't do it.
No,
So
I hear you. Exactly. We were talking about this off the air before we started, When I swatted towards becoming a radio DJ, I was taught by outcasts and rebels and misanthropes and malcontents. And sure, what is a nice word for this? I look very vanilla, but in truth, in my heart, I'm the guy that got my very first Linkin Park album when I was shy of 10 years old, when everyone else was more concerned about collecting figurines and more concerned about dressing to the latest trends. I just wanted to be in the streets on my bike, listening to LP or Limp Bizkit, and then, speaking as a millennial, I moved back in time and started listening to the classics and started listening to the overseas bands, and quote unquote that formed my career. And we spoke about this as well off the air as well. Coming from two different generations, the peer pressure, I'm sure, wasn't as bad as it must have been in your day, but in my time, the moment that you just want to move a direction, you're ostracized for life and you're called very nasty names. But speaking of, I'm sure there must have been, for you as well, there must have been a big education growing up from poor and coming to be the man that you are today. And I'm speaking in the sense of, was there perhaps a book or a specific album that just said to you, you know what, this is talking to me right here?
I was an avid reader growing up as well. I grew up in a generation where we didn't have cable, had just kind of started, right? But we were out in this little country farmhouse in the middle of nowhere where we didn't have cable. We obviously couldn't afford satellite, so I was a voracious reader. I was there. There's some. I read a lot of horror novels. Stephen King,
Clive Barker.
Clive Barker. Oh, in fact, Clive Barker was one of the reasons I actually got into the military.
Really?
Yeah, he wrote great spy stuff, and his submarines.
He did.
So he kind of tweaked my interest in the military. But there's a story on how I actually got into the military. It's kind of funny if I can kind of segue. When we were scouts, we had a scout troop, and I was an Eagle Scout. So I'm very, very proud that I had accomplished Eagle Scout. I've always been driven. So there were two of us Eagle Scouts in our troop, and we had gotten invited to Fairchild Air Force Base in Spokane, Washington. And our troop, I don't even remember how we got the invite. We had won a competition, basically. And we got to go spend a week up at Fairchild's, kind of get to look around, see how military life was. But the grand finale was we got to go board a KC-135 tanker and fly and refuel a B-52 over Alaska. So it was.
Oh, gee.
So as we got on the plane, the pilots asked who were the oldest. And me and my buddy, we were both the oldest, and so they flipped a coin for us, and I won the coin toss, and I got to sit in the cockpit for takeoff in the jump seat. So here I am, this 8-year-old kid on this, wide-eyed, massive tanker, taking off, going to refuel a B-52 over the air in Alaska, and it hooked me. And Top Gun had just aired. It had only been out for a few.
Yeah?
Here we are, on an Air Force base, watching, Tom Cruise playing Top Gun as a fighter pilot. We're flying over, refueling a B-52. And then when they were refueling the B-52, we actually got the opportunity to lay down next to the boom operator and watch the boom go down and the two planes connect. And they did breakaway drills and all this stuff. So long story short, I came home after that experience, and I went straight to the Air Force recruiter, and I'm like, I want to join up. And so I went and took the ASVAB test and joined into their delayed entry program. But here's the part that it goes off the rails is I joined the Air Force. I went in to talk to the recruiter for some reason. I don't remember what it was. And I had a buddy with me, and the recruiter wasn't there. So
oh no.
We went across the hall to the Marine Corps recruiter and said, hey, will you leave a message to, our recruiter that we're here? And the Marine Corps recruiter looks at me and he's like, what the hell are you joining the Air Force for? They're a bunch of pussies over there. Like, I've already done it. He goes, don't worry about it. We'll take care of that. So they asked me what I'd signed up for. I signed up for military police. They said, no, we'll take care of it. And precisely 2 weeks to the day from that point, I was standing on a set of yellow footprints in San Diego, MCRD, Marine Corps Recruit Depot.
Oh, man.
Not only me, but the guy, my buddy that I went with me in the military, he was also there. They got us both. He kind of hated me for that for a while. He ended up loving the Corps later on. He was a little green when he came. Yeah.
How long did you do time in the military, Marty?
I served 8 years total, 1986 to 1994.
So roughly about 2 years up until after I was born, 92. If there's one regret that I have is that I never got to serve in the Army. All of my family members are former Army Ranger, and as a result, I also have family who came from the police, and some were teachers. And, growing up as well, I saw a lot of my generation just literally go to mud. Because if there's one thing today that I think a lot of today's generation is missing, is discipline. And any branch of the military helped even that out, whether you were Air Force, Marine Corps, Army Ranger, and then, of course, most brutal of all, in my opinion, Navy SEALs. And I was watching a video the other day by Jocko Willink, who said there's still an opportunity. If you feel like you missed out, go and join the reserves. And I actually said to my mother, if I ever get the opportunity to immigrate to the U.S. and I get a green card, I'll sign up to do at least one term, maybe two, in the reserves. Because it's been sitting here and it's just never let go.
Yeah, Jocko, he's an amazing character. Like, I don't know. Have you ever watched any of his interviews on Rogan? He's just one of the most spoken, inspirational. Him, David Goggins.
There's a name, David Goggins.
Straight drive, right? Nothing will defeat them, and they will let nothing defeat them. They have that mentality and that mindset that no matter what the world tosses at them, that they're going to overcome it. And
absolutely.
And here lies a problem that I see in today's society is most people, even people my age, they don't have that kind of drive. They don't have that mindset. If you're told no once, maybe you'll try again. But if you're told twice, that's it. I'm not gonna, you cannot be a Navy SEAL ever without having been defeated. Like and I don't mean defeated physically, emotionally. They will break you, right? But you have to get over that defeat and say, okay, I'm going to tomorrow, and I'm going to go and do that again. And knowing that it's going to be brutal. It's going to be physically taxing. It's going to be mentally taxing, and it's going to beat you up. You're still going to get up and you're going to push that drive. You're not going to ring that bell, that washout bell that the Navy SEALs have. That has to be, whoever has rung that bell has to, they know that they didn't have it.
They've got a lifetime of regret. They've got a lifetime of regret. To give you an idea as well, when I went to college, the program that we had was internationally designed, and we had consultants who came in and told us about our chosen field of industry, how it was done overseas, to drag the country's infrastructure to the 21st century. And they made it tough, big time tough. We had our own Hell Week where we stayed at the campus, and they made us stay up at all times of the night just working. You could only go outside for, to go pee in a bush. But furthermore than that, you were drilled. Right. And you've put so much of effort into this project. And if an adjudicator came in and said, sorry, and they drew a line through your work, they tossed it outside of the adjudicator's office, you were weeping. We were 200 who went into the program. Only 50 managed to ultimately get their certificate. So that's why I am motivated to do the things that I do, because I just won't give up. I've forgotten how to give up. It's a dead language to me.
It's easy to want to be able to lay down and say, I'm just going to go with the flow. That there are too many people who will take that route, right? And I have them right now. They're like, oh, it's too hard to buy a house. It's too hard to do this. It's too hard to do this. And some people may never get it, but if you keep going, regardless of how hard it is, you at least know that you pushed forward, right? That you didn't say, it's too hard, that you actually just did it, right? I think that the mentality, we live in a society now where we have three different mentalities. You got your victim mentality. You got your victim.
Oh, yes.
And you got your villain mentality. The 3 V's, right? Your villain, your
victor, villain. I like that.
Yeah. Your victims are always going to be your people who are increasingly growing in numbers now, that they're never going to, they're oppressed. I'm of the oppressed class. I'm of the class of people who are always picked on, who will never make it, who your generation, speaking of my generation, my grandparents or my parents' generation, you guys took it all from us, and made it hard for us to get it any further. The victim mentality is growing so fast that the villain mentality is taking over, because they're like, okay, now I'm going to get it through any means necessary, right? And then you've got the victor mentality, and the victor mentality is the people who say, I will not be defeated no matter how hard it gets. I'm going to push through the pain. I'm going to get up. I'm going to do whatever it takes. If I have to get up at 6 a.m. and go to sleep at 2 p.m. and get 4 hours of sleep, that's what I'm going to do to make it, right?
Oh yeah. And they're low. Absolutely.
But we're being overwhelmed with the other two, because they're basically supporting each other. The victims and the villains are almost of the same class mindset these days.
Well, there's power in masses. And it's become commodity. Like you and I have spoken, which is the overarching theme of the conversation. Comfort leads to more comfort. But what people struggle to see, it's a virus, and it's killing people. Suicide is going up exponentially. Drug abuse is going up exponentially. Alcoholism is going up exponentially. Gender-based violence, men and women, is going up exponentially, because what I think, and you can sacrifice me for this if you want to, dear viewer or listener, and you can shove off to somewhere else, but this is a fact. Victim and villain mentality is causing men today to degrade themselves to nothing, where they're allowing themselves to have people sit on their head and dictate to them like a big monkey on their back. And why? Because we as men are meant to be warriors. We are meant to be the leaders. We are meant to be the providers, and we are meant to be the predators. And we're not living up to that standard because it's not being preached today. It's not an accepted norm in our society. And I'm going to ask you a straight, blunt question. Where are you today, predators? Don't hide. We were talking about the alpha. The whole concept is misunderstood. You know, society thinks alpha today is toxic because he influences the kind of people to think that they are weaklings and that if they don't follow the alpha, they're going to go for doom. But it's not the truth. Equal to that, the alpha is not a lone wolf. The alpha is the leader, and others follow him because he provides a testimony for others to stand for.
Oh, absolutely. You know, have you ever met a CEO who's not an alpha? You know, I mean, you stop and think about it. Anybody who is your boss, your employer, and an alpha doesn't always have to be. I'm talking to CEO. Doesn't always have to be the male persuasion. But have you ever met a strong CEO or a weak CEO that has a Fortune 500 company, or you know, consider to write out $1 million worth of payroll every week, that doesn't have alpha characteristics? They have to be able to lead. They have to be able to delegate, and they have to be able to handle criticism, right, without being offended. The part of the problem I see with society today is everybody's offended about everything. If you say something that is offensive, or you hear something that's offensive, I hear people offend me all the time, right? Or say offensive things all the time. But I don't take it to heart, right? If you can't take criticism, or if you can't take if you're somebody who's in a position of authority, people are going to not like that. You have to be able to handle those type of personalities and say, I don't care what you think. This is my company. I'm the one delegating. I'm the one who's in charge of the pack.
Absolutely, without a shadow of a doubt. But the best part of it all is anyone can be an alpha. You just need to get your head right. You need to get your emotions right. And it's not a fact of why me. It's more of a fact of try me, because I am going to walk out on the other side even better than what I was before.
I agree. But I think the term alpha is one that just triggers people, right? They don't like to hear the term because they think of it as something that is a bad thing. So, but anybody can be alpha. A beta, there are plenty of betas that have become alphas because they've learned, okay, this isn't working for me. I'm not getting the girl. I'm not getting the job. I'm not, I'm walking around with my tail tucked between my legs. I have to change. So they go and they start reading Jordan Peterson's book, 12 Rules for Life. Will turn a beta into an alpha, right? Make your bed, get up, work out, have a routine.
Absolutely.
And like, you can become anything you want to be as long as you decide to apply it. But you have to get to that point in your life where you're like, okay, something has to change. I have a child who was living his life in such a disastrous way that it was literally, I was awake at night listening to the police scanner, waiting to see if I could hear his name come across because of the things that were going on in his life that were so destructive, right? And it was to the point where I was afraid every time the phone would ring that I was going to hear that he'd either, gotten arrested or hurt somebody badly, killed somebody or himself, and it was just one day he decided, I'm done living like this. I can't do it. And he flipped that switch. Now he's living in a new home. He's got he's working in construction, in contracting, has a lovely family, beautiful kids, and it's night and day, right? He changed that. I'm living this life of destruction, and betas live destructive lives. They think they're
They
alphas.
do.
That's the other thing. Somebody who's a beta will live in a way that they think is, I'm powerful, but they've got no control whatsoever over their lives, right? But an alpha doesn't necessarily mean you're the strongest of the pack. It just means you're the wisest of the pack.
And the most resilient.
And the
Absolutely.
most resilient. Yeah, that you can overcome, that you can sit there and say, I am willing to make these inner changes in order to live better.
And not just for myself, but for the better of my bloodline. And here's something that I also want to address, ladies and gentlemen. If you think that it's only men that commit gender-based violence, as we often see in the media as of late, take a good long look in the mirror. If there's one gender that is the most bullied, the most belittled, and the most abused, apart from women, it's men in larger numbers. And their fatalities are not even reported by one smidgen in the press, which also has become convenience as of late. And as a result, relating to what Marty has just expounded upon, has also led to a lot of men not stepping into their main and leading because they're afraid to become a statistic. Fear has become soluble, and it's a very tragic thing to see. And I've been at the receiving end of that. I mean, that's how I lost my last radio job, because I was bullied by a woman who sat in my head because I gave her the opportunity. They gave her a position high above me in title, but we were supposed to be on even keel. And unfortunately, I got the short end of the stick. But everything happens for the good, I suppose. To be able to talk to you about things like this. If you think I'm lying, do yourself a favor and go look up a TV movie that was released in 1991 with Peter Strauss called Men Don't Tell. Then come back to me and tell me if I'm a liar. But switching just gears for a couple of seconds, and Marty, this is how you and I connected with regards to the red pill movement, which is alive and well. Smaller in number, yes, but exponentially growing. To you, what are the facets which make up the red pill mindset? Give me a better understanding of what it means to have a red pill mindset.
It's amazing. The red pill thing, it's taking traction because it took traction with me during the beginning of COVID. I'm sitting there going, okay, do we live in a matrix? And we go back to the red pill matrix, right? The red pill, blue pill. If you want to get out of the matrix, you take the red pill. And if you want to go back into the matrix and just live as you're being told to live, right? Then you take the blue pill and you go back and you become the worker bot, right? That has to go and be your energy for the matrix. So when you take the Matrix, which was the fictional movie in the 90s, and you put it into real life today, that red pill, it needs to be taken. Like we do live in a form of a matrix. Now, I'm not saying that we live in an actual virtual reality computer simulation. I'm saying that we live in a society right now that has taken human beings and turned them into exactly what they want them to be.
Sheep.
For the machine, right? Nothing more than the worker bee, and you have no value other than your energy for the machine. So for me, red pilling myself is I'm no longer going to be energy for the machine. I am not going to comply with your mandates. I'm not going to comply with society's norms. I'm not going to comply with the gender nonsense that's going on, where I'm being told that everything that these skittle-haired nutbags are screaming at me that I have to do, right? Or that I have to believe that way. Now, I'm going to probably shock everybody, but I actually have a transgender in my family who I love very much. It has nothing to do with love or hate, right? You can have somebody that has a certain lifestyle that you can absolutely love. And I love this person with all my heart, right?
I've got gay friends who I love with all my heart.
Exactly. It has nothing to do with that. What it has to do is, and I'll preface this with saying my transgender family member is very conservative and actually just wants to live his life. It's a female to male, wants to live his life very calmly. He doesn't want to be harassed. He doesn't want, he's not out there shouting, you have to recognize me, you have to see me, as, he's not part of the madness of that is going on, right? So I am to be completely straightforward with that. However, the masses are telling us that we have to believe this way, period.
And that it's the only way to think and to thrive.
The matrix, I'm going to say, not the masses, the matrix, and going into the red pill thing, is telling you, you have to believe this, you have to believe this, and you have to believe this. You have to believe that this war is good, this war is bad. Ukraine is good, or Israel is bad, Palestine is bad. I mean, it's we're being fed so much nonsense that no one thinks for themselves. No one will pick apart anything for themselves anymore. And if you do, you're considered a nonconformist and you're an outlaw, right? And I was way before it was popular to be an outlaw.
Well, I mean, you had an audience with Sonny Barger. That's about as outlaw as you can get.
Right? But if we do not take a stand against the matrix, against the system, against the machine, we will be consumed by it. And everything kind of going even into the whole Project Bluebeam thing. Whether or not Project Bluebeam is an actual thing, the mechanism is there to make people so brainwashed. We're being so conditioned as human beings to believe everything we're told, that if Project Bluebeam were an actual thing, we would be consumed by it. I think it would take out 90% of the population.
Well, I wanted to take it a step further, and I was going to save it for a solo podcast, but Marty, you've actually given me the perfect opportunity. Let me give you another example. What happened in the 60s when John Wayne was the big motion picture actor of the time? He, Clark Gable, Ward Bond set up the House of Un-American Activities Committee to help rat out communist sympathizers. Yes, a lot of people got blacklisted. Excuse me, it wasn't the 60s, it was the 50s. Yes, a lot of people got blacklisted. They lost their jobs. They were kicked out of the Screen Actors Guild, and this is playing out today if you've been paying attention. And as a result, they had to sign a loyalty oath that was set up by Cecil B. DeMille. John Ford actually stood up for the whole thing, blah, blah, blah. So that's how the whole thing came to an end, especially when Kirk Douglas gave Dalton Trumbo screenwriter's credit on Spartacus. What happened when the Ruskies left America, when they couldn't intoxicate the media in that time? They came here, took savages who were sabotaging, committing bomb explosions, took them to the Soviet Union, trained them in sabotage and communist military tactics, brought them back here, committed more atrocities, and who was one of their most prominent figures that they trained? Nelson Mandela, the most famous man in the world. And today he's hailed a hero.
Yeah, and
struggle
how many years did Nelson Mandela serve in prison?
27, I think.
20, I was thinking it was in the high 20s. So, and then gets out and becomes the country's president,
and led everyone. Basically, gave birth to socialism today. And if you think about it as well, socialism is praised worldwide, especially in America. But if you think about it, what did the Nazi Party promulgate? Socialism. And socialism ultimately caused Jews to be gassed in Auschwitz, Sobibor, Buchenwald, and you name it.
Blows me away is right now we have in a movement in most civilized countries right now for socialism. There's cycling back up and it's ramping up even higher, right? Yet they call conservatives the Nazis. Yet I have watched all week the American socialists calling for the gassing of Jews. So it blows me away that I'm being called a Nazi for being a conservative, and I'm not even that conservative. I'm probably closer to the libertarian side than more conservative side, right?
You're preaching to the converted. You're preaching to the converted, and I've got Jewish heritage.
Yeah. But who is being harmed here by the socialist movement? We're calling for the extermination of people right now, and yet I'm the one being called the Nazi. So,
well, you know what?
I don't know. I think socialism, it's been infiltrated by from the 60s, the college professors. Look at Harvard right now, and Columbia and Yale and all of these universities. You have the 60s radical hippies that wanted to go with the communism, that wanted to go with the the anti-war protesters of Vietnam, and now they're the ones that are molding the minds of every single generation for the last 2 generations are being molded into malleable mush.
Yeah. And I felt so sorry for all those soldiers that went to fight in Vietnam and came back and they were branded baby killers, dope addicts, murderers by all these soulless cretins, and actually threw them with eggs and all other unmentionables to fact to such a degree that they weren't even allowed to wear their own uniforms. I mean, think about it. It wasn't Dwight Eisenhower who was president. It was Lyndon Johnson who escalated the war. I mean, these were kids, 18 years old, barely out of high school, thrown into a Middle Eastern, into an Asian country where culture shock became so prevalent, and they were fighting for honor, and it was a war that they lost. They came back and they were treated like garbage. I mean, if I think about it, my dad went to go fight in Angola, and they also didn't have much success. And when they came back as well, they weren't even given as much as a handshake by the government. Caskets came back from Angola filled with rocks because they couldn't find the bodies, and only 20 years later they only found the remains in Angola. And it was lied on. It was said in their sheet that they came back blown to pieces, but they couldn't find the carcasses. So yes, there have been mistakes made. There have been lies told. But the onus, I believe, it's because it's up to you and me that we need to learn from those mistakes and carry it on to the next generation. If I could extrapolate a little further, I have to be honest with you. The reason why I'm so patriotic towards Americans is because America still stands for the things that I would yearn a teaspoon for, that I can't get in this country. Yes, we spoke about transgenderism just a couple of seconds ago. You've got a transgender family member. I would give my 4 front teeth to be able to speak my mind in a democratic manner, I hasten to add, have my voice be heard, but also take in an opposite opinion without it having to be this fist fight and we all can just take hands and sing Kumbaya. But we all need to face the truth as well. Not everything was perfect back then, but we're striving towards it. But it takes both sides to make the cookie crumble.
I think that I think the society as a rule, I would say, and I'm horrible with percentages, but there's very rarely I ever talk to somebody face to face that has much different opinion than I do. You know what I mean? So in America, we do have the far right, which I don't want to associate with. We have the far left, but I don't want to associate with. But in America, we still have a very, very, very center right country, right? And it's amazing. All you see and all you hear about is that people are warring over here, that we're just, it's nothing but race wars, it's nothing but gender wars, it's nothing but unrest. But it's really not that way. Over here, we are still very much Americans united. But our media and social media, they want us to believe, and they want everybody to believe, that we all hate each other, that we're so turned on one another that our republic is going to crumble.
And I doubt seriously that's going to happen. I doubt sincerely. It's the spirit of the people.
We're far from it. We're dysfunctional. Our Congress is a mess. We can't pick a speaker to save our lives. I don't understand that. However, as a people, we're still very much a cohesive country. And I've been all over the world. With my military travels, I've been to countries that there's no way I would ever want to. I have not been to South Africa, but I've been to Mogadishu. And so.
Oh yeah.
There's the world isn't a place that I would want to live in any other country but our country.
And you know what? I said it to you. I'll say it to you because I've said it to other friends of mine who also hail from the States. If I had to get the opportunity now to go over on sponsorship and obtain a Greek card that would allow me to become an American citizen, the first thing I'll ask that bloke who's doing the application, how quick can I start reciting the pledge?
Pledge of Allegiance, yeah. It's a shame that there are so many Americans that find the pledge to be offensive. But still, I still believe that the lion's share of us over here are very grateful, and it goes with Canada as well. Canada,
of course,
is moving very socialist under the Trudeau administration. However, a very small segment. You got the coastal elites on either side of the country. America coastal elites on the east and the west sides, trying to dictate how we live in the middle, right? But the middle is still America, right? We're still the ones who get up, farm our lands, drive our trucks,
keep the economy going.
Keep the economy going, and we won't be overrun. And I believe Canada is kind of the same way. That there you've got the small factions that want to turn Canada into a complete socialist country. I don't see it ever happening. The trucker strike proved that. In
Ontario.
They're not going to have any of that anymore. So I think that going kind of back to the red pill thing, though, that we need to red pill a whole lot more people.
Big time. We need to mentor people to become more red pill, I think.
Precisely. It's a move. It's funny, when I did my red pill post that kind of got a lot of traction, I was attacked by the left over that.
No kidding.
I had probably 400 or 500 comments that were attacking me as being transphobic and racist.
Oh, for goodness sake!
This movement that the Matrix was actually a transpositive movie. That it was created as a transpositive movement saying that you can transition from this to this in the Matrix, and that's why it was a trans movie, and that one of the producers, I guess, was a trans woman.
No, both of the directors, they were brothers. Andy and Larry Wachowski transgendered it or made the transition to women. That's where the mistake is. It was never meant to be a statement of sorts that it is okay to make the transition wholesale. It was about free thinking. I wrote I wrote 2 theses on the Matrix films. It's got nothing to do with that. Nothing whatsoever.
But see, here's the thing. Our youth or our younger Gen Zers are coming out and saying they're finding fault in everything. If you say this is red, then they're going to say this is green, right? They're not going to agree with you because they believe that their movement is the only righteous movement out there, right? So they're going to find fault in everything, right down to the whole transgender movie, like a movie that was meant to be sheer entertainment, which The Matrix was one of the coolest movies that ever came out in the day. I mean, it was
one of the best
transformative movies that were like
big time.
Okay. But they take it and they put special meaning to it. They'll attach their agenda to it. When it wasn't meant to be attached. No. It was meant to be a entertaining movie, but then they'd say, well, you're red pilling people. Well, I'm red pilling people. I'm using it as an analogy. I'm not using it as, literally, like you're using it as
sweeping, defining statement.
A literal movement, yeah. And so, anyway.
Well, you know what? Horses for courses. That's the way I think. I look at my immediate environment around me, and I agree with you. I see sheep all over the show. But I think you can agree with me as well that moving through life, it's better to show people rather than tell people, because they're being told all over the show how to live, how to think, how to how to fart, even if that's appropriate. But in that sense as well, don't just tell me, show me. Will, I think, reap more benefits going forward. And you've got a fellow admirer in that regard, and I am ever so more curious, equal to that, hungry for the truth. And that's why I think you and I have gotten so well over the last while, is because we see eye to eye on the same thing, but we're not shoving it down everyone's throats. Look, let's face it, truth hurts. And if people are going to get offended, then let them get offended. Comedians do it all the time. It should be more of a fact of, you first?
Even the comedians right now are being, they're being silenced on college campuses right now because what they say hurts. It's not. If you think of Dave Chappelle's a pencil, you should watch Andrew Dice Clay or Old Eddie Murphy.
I love Andrew Dice Clay. I love his comedy. I love his movie, The Adventures of Ford Fairlane. But
right, thought about that movie.
watch George Carlin's American Dream, that documentary that was made a couple of years ago about Carlin's career. That's right. That's the most offensive, and it's created by a liberal, Judd Apatow. But still, there's truth in that, because he was like a Nostradamus, much like with Lenny Bruce, about world history and how history tends to repeat itself. It was never meant to hurt people through what he had said through his social commentary. He was just trying to tell people, just wake up for a change. That's all that Carlin's comedy was. Yeah.
And George Carlin his delivery was just fantastic.
Among the best.
That guy, he made you think and laugh at the same time.
Absolutely. Especially when you look at his stand-up from 1992 called Jammin' in New York, all the way up until his last show, Bad For You. That's where the more social commentary art started to peer through. But getting back to what we're talking about, the truth hurts. And if it hurts, good. put a band-aid on it and rip it off as fast as possible so that you can catch a wake up. Because sooner or later, and I was a liberal myself, bear in mind, the truth will hit you quicker than a slap in the face. And the quicker it does, the quicker you can make a more positive contribution. Case in point.
Sure. You know, and I don't even have a problem with liberals being
Neither do
liberal.
I.
If you're a liberal, then you're a liberal for, you know, a reason. Whether it's you were raised that way, your parents taught you that way, your surroundings or your inclinations, whatever, turn you into a liberal. What I have a problem with, and I have a problem with this on conservative side as well, because we have a problem with conservatives. Here's my thing. Conservatives are very loud now. They didn't used to be as loud. I have a bunch of friends that are, or not friends, but people that I see their stuff come across my feed all the time. We follow each other, right? And I'm becoming increasingly alarmed, though, at the level of hatred that conservatives are putting out, right? Now, it's not without reason. We have hatred because we are seeing our society as we have always known it decaying to the point of chaos, and our especially over here in the States, where we're seeing the crime that is taking over under liberal policies, and we're seeing our cities being overrun with the gangs going in and busting through the stores and doing smash and grabs and stuff. So the anger on the conservative side is very palpable, right? What I do have a problem with some of my conservative constituents is they are screaming, but they're not taking any action.
I agree with you.
The conservatives, there's the old joke about an election on, you know, when like George Bush was running against John Kerry, okay? George Bush was getting beaten on all the exit polls and it looked like John Kerry was going to win. And some kid said, but Dad, the Republicans are all still at work. They're going to vote when they get off of work, right? And then George won. So what I see with conservatives is they have this drive, they have this gut force, right? They want to have everything the way they want it, right? But they're not willing to put forth the rallies or the things that will kind of change the tide, right? Because let's face it, you got a mortgage, you've got kids to feed, you've got, you know, all of car payments and, you know, a life to live, and you've got very little time to go out and be very proactive in your conservative stance, right? Whereas the opposition, they can rally for, and I don't want this to be taken the wrong way, because I'm sure they have jobs and whatever careers, but the liberals right now are taking their message. They're better and more effective at not only pushing their message forward, but activism toward it.
Big time.
My conservative friends are very loud and very vocal and very and they're becoming increasingly angrier in their rhetoric, but they're not being proactive in their movement to change it back, you know.
Fiscal form, yeah. And that's what's needed. That's personally what's needed. If you want to put up, then put up. Otherwise, shut up. Name calling is not going to... It's not the answer. It's not the answer.
But the conservatives are becoming increasingly, how would I say it without being wrong? They're being increasingly violent in their rhetoric as well. They're starting to take on the liberal tactic of, you know, their rhetoric is ramping up to the point where I'm starting to disengage with some of these people because not that I'm saying that there isn't a point where we need revolution. I think we're actually heading towards some form of a worldwide revolution, if not even World War III right now. I mean, look where we're at, but we're because of weak leadership in every single country.
Yeah,
right.
Absolutely.
But we have weak leadership because we are putting up weak people who won't
take the lead.
They're not taking the lead. They're not the alpha, right?
Absolutely. Bringing it full circle.
So then you've got 3 or 4 different countries with leaders. They're like, well, we're not, this is our opportunity to take them by the throat.
And this provides a perfect opportunity for you and I, if I hadn't said this before, I'll say it again, to start integrating it in this current generation, in our grandkids, in our kids, if we are blessed with young kids, so that they can carry on the mantle. And that leads me to my next question before we talk about perspectives, because I love that show. I really do. I think a big problem also as well, not just on the level of politics, it's fatherlessness. I've spoken about a little bit about my father who walked out on me, and you've spoken as well on having a child who went off a little bit off course. Would you be able to, for argument's sake, take on a mentorship role to help troubled youth today?
Absolutely. My life experiences have taken me from growing up poor to the military to a motorcycle club, to arrests and to redemption, to being a believer in my faith, and falling to my knees and saying, I can't do this on my own anymore. So actually finding a faith and now working toward my Christian faith and being a much more productive member of society than what I ever was, years ago. And I believe my life experiences can take someone who has been troubled. I think a mentor has to be somebody that has experienced some of the things that they're mentoring, the people
100%. 100%.
Right? If I'm somebody who has lived a white collar life my whole life, and I'm trying to go to the streets and talk to a kid and say, feel your pain, man. He's going to look at me and it's like, yeah.
It's not going to work.
So I would absolutely, and I think it's needed, not a necessary, the mentorship of our youth.
Absolutely. Now, as part of that mentorship, I would like to say, because that's what I get from your new show called Perspectives, you took The Savage Gentleman and you've started to make it a brand. I really love that show, and you've pressed on my button a couple of times with regards to technical queries and whatnot. Was it the fact of you wanted to connect with people like me who has the same thought process and you wanted to learn more, or what was your thoughts on getting Perspective started?
I think that podcasting has really transformed the way I think, the way I see and take in my news, and the way I take in my societal perspectives, right? Which is one reason I named it Perspectives, because my perspective may be different than your perspective, but we can talk about it and we can reach common ground. We don't always have to be warring with each other. So I figure if I can have a right perspective and you have a left perspective, and we can sit down and find some common ground, that's the whole reason I wanted to start the show. The show's kind of been it's been fun. I've struggled with it because I haven't picked up a computer. Like we talked earlier, I let technology kind of leave me in the dust for multiple years, and then all of a sudden I thought, well, I want to do this, and I've actually been approached by several people about doing something along the lines of what I'm doing with Perspectives, because I do have a massive following on Instagram, and I hate to say influence, because it's one of those things that you don't want to be too grandiose about yourself, right? But I've been approached by multiple people saying, I like your balance. I like how you can reach people that I can't reach. And so that's why I decided to start Perspectives. And I kind of floundered with it. My very first show, I discussed how I started it, and I work with a lot of musicians, and I love music. Music is what literally centers me. It's what keeps me calm in the storm. Music and ASMR. I don't know. Are you familiar with ASMR?
Yeah, absolutely.
I literally listen
Goosies.
to it. It brings my blood pressure down, and and music. So I started the show with 4 interviews of 4 different bands from across the world. One from Ukraine, one from France, one from America, and one from Denmark.
Wow! So you went the whole hog.
Easy. And I did it all in one weekend, and I thought it was going to be easy. And I'm like, oh, this is going to be really simple. Podcasting, you're just talking to people, right? Holy hell. It was the most difficult thing I've ever done in my life. And I was so discouraged, I dang near scrapped it.
I hear you.
I dumped the shows. I didn't air them. I had technical glitches through the whole thing. I had no idea what I was doing, period, right? So
best way to learn.
I dumped it. And here's another thing. I had lost some of my self-confidence. I had really long dreadlocks for years, and I shaved my head last.
I remember.
And it really kind of took the Samson's story, right? Samson.
Yeah.
And the strength.
Samson and Delilah.
I literally felt like I had lost a piece of me when and so my screen presence wasn't what I wanted it to be. Because when I first had embarked on doing the podcast, I had the long dreads, and I'm like, and then when they were giving me headaches, and because they were so long and heavy, that I shaved them, and I literally kind of lost that confidence. I didn't have the screen confidence that I thought I would have, right? Especially when I'm interviewing musicians and people who I've looked up to my whole life. So long story short, Perspectives, I started it, I stalled, and then my wife just said, you've got to do it. You've got to do it. You've got this reach. You've got to get it out there. So I started it again. And I've taken the show kind of in a direction of not a supernatural or like the Mandela effect that I discussed, or the Project Bluebeam. I just find certain topics exciting and interesting, and I'm like, I'm going to bring out these topics and talk to people about them, see what they think. They may think I'm a complete nutbag for believing in the Mandela effect, or they may think I'm a complete nutbag for thinking about Project Bluebeam's a thing. However, they're legitimate topics, right?
Well, Art Bell did the same thing. George Nuri did the same thing.
See, I loved Art Bell. I grew up on Art Bell. I didn't grow up on him because I didn't discover him until my 20s, but I listened to him nightly,
Of course. I love Coast to Coast.
Coast to Coast was fantastic. George Norrie took me a little bit longer to get to where I liked him, but then once I finally got into Art Bell's hard shoes to follow.
Big time. Big time.
He was so iconic. And there's a guy, his name is Clyde Lewis. You ever listen to Clyde Lewis?
Oh, yes. Clyde Lewis. He worked with the Warrens a couple of times, as well as Ralph Sarchie.
Yeah.
And if you're wondering, Ralph Sarchie, look at the movie Deliver Us from Evil from Eric Bana from 2014. Holy wacko.
So that's kind of where I took it. And I've decided to just kind of go with it. And, I've watched some of your other episodes with the Dad Hat, and the guy that did the Dad Hat podcast. And he's got kind of this niche, where he talks about this specific
philosophy
thing. My idea is to just kind of go with, I still have some musicians lined up to talk to, and I have got probably about 40 or 50 musicians from bands from across the world. Some of them are just starting out. Some of them are headliners, that I've been in relationships with for years. that I'm going to put on the show. My biggest fear about putting them on right now is I'm still working on tech stuff. To not disappoint them by being able to make sure my tech stuff is I'm a work in progress on this whole thing. So I'm kind of got them on the back burner right now. Well, I'm just working
Sure.
on screen and learning how to actually speak without I have a slight speech impediment, which has also given me a little bit of pause, because I didn't think would be an issue, but then when you hear it back or when you see it back, it really kind of sets you back on your heels, And I'm like, well, you know what? I have to just move past that.
Well done. Well done.
Just make it work with whatever means necessary.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Marty, bringing it to a close, I really have to congratulate you. I mean, you're a work of art. You're a work in progress. You've accomplished a lot. You're a man of big vision. And for a man who claims to have a speech impediment, you've had a discussion with me where we've covered everything. We covered music. We covered philosophy. We covered politics to a great extent. I really think that you've got a niche here. And I'm sure you're going to take Savage Gentleman to the nth degree that it needs to go. For our listeners, you're more than welcome to follow Marty at the.savage.gentleman.official on Instagram, and do check out Perspectives, which is available on YouTube. Listen to what Marty has to say, and I'm sure that you'll walk away a very enriched human being. Marty, my thanks to you. You're an absolute treasure, and I'm grateful that you and I have connected, and we've built a successful working relationship and a friendship to boot. May many more follow, my kind sir.
Likewise. Well, let's do this again.
Absolutely.
And, I'd love to do a follow, and see how you're doing. I think your show is amazing as well. Like I told you, you got a svelte voice.
I've given myself over to it. I've given myself over to it.
I can't have anything on you, brother.
And with that,
it's been fantastic, and it's good knowing you. Seriously, I love speaking with like-minded people and being able to just connect and have a real good one-on-one, man-to-man conversation. So,
absolutely,
I can't wait to see where your future's going, and I'm just honored to have been part of your show.
Oh, my man, you're welcome anytime. And with that, folks, we'd like to remind you that through APX, you can also strive to become the following: an unbreakable mind, an unstoppable force, an untamed spirit, and like Marty, become an army of one, an apex predator. Guys, look after yourself. We'll see you again in the near future. Bye-bye.